Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com, and we're back with this week's new comic book reviews. And it's kind of another small week, which is, I think, kind of good that we're getting these smaller weeks, because I think it allows you to kind of, branch out, maybe look for some new titles that you haven't seen or read. Also, you can catch up on stuff with like trades and hardcovers and stuff. And so I think it's a good balance. Because there was a lot of times where there was just too many new books coming out, and everything, a lot of stuff would get lost in the shuffle because there would be like a few big books, and then a lot of the smaller books, which I find a lot of times much more interesting, would kind of fall by the wayside. So I think this is kind of a good, I mean, maybe a little bit more product per week, but more better product. I think that's always the case, that we can get some much better stuff. Before we get started, just heads up, don't forget, if you live in California or coming to California, WonderCon's going to be in a few weeks. They've got a really great lineup of guests. Tom King's going to be there, Mitch Gerards, Phil Jimenez, Mark Evanier, just tons of people. It's honestly one of my favorite conventions of the year. I mean, I love Comic-Con, but it's kind of crazy where this is like a smaller version of Comic-Con. It has all the stuff that San Diego has, but it's kind of more small and intimate. And the one thing it really has, and this is my favorite thing about the show, is they have a great artist alley. It's huge. It's insanely huge. So definitely, if you haven't gotten tickets, they still have tickets available. Definitely check that out if you're in the LA area or gonna be in the LA area. And definitely, if you see me there, stop me. We can always talk comics. I love talking comics. So anyways, but just wanted to let everybody heads up, that's something really to check out. So this week, the first book we have is Clear, _1, written by Scott Snyder, with artwork by Francis Monopole. So this is one of those Comixology originals, from Amazon. So thankfully Dark Horse has been reprinting a lot of these. And what's nice about this is that when they're reprinting them, in this case, it's basically an oversized comic. You're getting two of the chapters at the same time. So what this is, so the basic story is Sam Dunn, who is a detective. So this is set in the kind of a dystopian type future. But what it is there's these things called veils. And what it is like, if you're using like, TikTok or Instagram and those, how you can put filters on your face. Well, what this does is veils put filters on the world. So you can imagine it like the 1930s. You can imagine it like the 80s. You can imagine a zombie apocalypse where everybody's zombies. You can imagine it with, like no buildings and just out in nature, and maybe people or animals. So you get to choose. But what it's also created, there's kind of a black market for black veils, and and part of the problem with the black veils is that multiple people are using the same veil, and it basically makes people go nuts. So Sam is a detective, and he, so he's on a case of so people, so they're like the wife has hired him to find out if his or her husband is cheating with different veils. And so it's kind of like that. And, so he's on this case, and then he finds out, this woman that he, knew and was also he was very close to, she had committed suicide. But what you find out is that she had sent him, he had bought her a watch because he was in love with her, and she returned it to him. And when he looked at it, on the back of it, there was a inscription that says, "I was murdered." So this kind of has to do with the whole black market of black veils. And but the other thing that's kind of interesting is antiques, stuff that was created before the connectivity. disrupts the veil. So like if you're wearing, clothes from, vintage clothing or have a vintage item, it disrupts the veil. And so there's kind of that going on. And what's interesting um, is that Snyder, there's a lot of dialogue here. He's really setting up this world. There's times where it's not that it's over dialogue. There's just a lot of story to take in because there's, the exposition is setting this whole thing up. So it's kind of one of those, I'll be honest, there was a couple times where it was a little overwhelming, but it's also where you kind of need to, kind of sit back and let Snyder kind of, unfurl this world and what he's creating. And then the second, chapter in here kind of goes back to like how the Veils became and how, World War III didn't quite go the way everybody kind of went. And, I don't want to give too much more away, but it's a really interesting, story and a setup. Manipul's artwork is really, really nice. I mean, you're familiar. He did a lot of work at DC and everything. And it's really good here. I mean, there's some action and stuff, but a lot of it is really just, dialogue of, people talking and everything. So, once again, he does a really nice job with facial expressions and stuff. The artwork's really, really nice. I mean, he's a really great artist. And this, I think this book is really interesting for him because it's kind of like, it's noirish, it's detective, murder mystery. It's kind of a lot of, basic things, but, Snyder and Manipul, really pull it all together. I really enjoyed this book. It's worth checking out. I know, you can read it digitally at Comixology, but I'm more of a, physical. I like really, being able to, study the page and everything. And I think it works better as a comic than watching, kind of trying to read stuff on your like iPad. It works, but I just think you get a much tactile feeling when you're holding the comic. Next up, we have Almighty #1. Or number 2, not #1. We did #1 last month. It's written and drawn by Edward LaRoche. So what this is Fail and Dell. Fail is like the bounty hunter that's come to rescue Dale, who was kidnapped by this Lancaster City motorcycle gang, and she's getting her back. Trying to get her back home because she's been hired to find her. And I'm sorry. It was the Golden State motorcycle gang. They're going to Lancaster City. That's the first city that they kind of get to where they can, take a breather. They can get a hotel room. They can eat real food and stuff like that. So what it is, they kind of have a night out. And, things go well and then things don't go well. I don't want to really say too more. This is kind of an interesting story. I think the thing is, in a lot of respects, the story itself is a little on the thin side, only because what LaRoche is doing here, he's really building the foundation for the two characters. And so a lot of it's just kind of situations at this point. I mean, we really don't know what, was she kidnapped on purpose? We're not quite sure. Why is the gang so interested in getting her back and following her? So there's kind of a lot of unanswered questions that we're not quite seeing. The thing I did like is that we learn a little bit more about Fail this issue, which is good. So he's just building the story. I find it really interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm blown away by this story because in a lot of respects you've kind of read this before, but I think there's something deep down. I think there's some sort of like secret that we haven't quite learned yet, and I think that's what's intriguing me about this story. Beyond the surface stuff. So I think it's still worth checking out. I think the third issue is really going to need to really kind of decide where, what this is really about. Is there something deeper going on with Dell or Fail and why this motorcycle gang, is really chasing them to get her back. So that'll be interesting to see. So hopefully that third issue will kind of pull that together. Next up, we have The Adventures of Superman, John Kent, #1, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by Clayton Henry. So this is spinning out of the new Superman titles. And so what it is John, he's kind of become Superman. I mean, Kal-El Clark Kent, Superman is back, but John has, while he was gone, took over being Superman. So we kind of have two Supermans right now. But this really has to do with, because John was actually kidnapped and tortured by Ultraman, and what we find out is Ultraman's going to different Earth's dimensions and killing Kal-El's, and it's like, why is he doing this? What is the ultimate thing? And so Val-Zod, the Superman of Earth 2, comes to Earth 1 to warn John about Ultraman, and of course John has a bone to pick because he stole his childhood, because he time did not stand still for him, but it stood still on Earth. So he's older, but he's still like a kid. And so it'll be interesting. I'm a big fan of Tom Taylor. Nightwing is just absolutely amazing. I like this first issue. I didn't necessarily blow my socks off, but he's kind of setting up stuff. And I mean, there has been this kind of recent history with John and all this other stuff. So he's kind of like building on that. I think the Ultraman is an interesting twist. Val-Zod is, I really enjoy him as a Superman, so it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see what Taylor does with that. Clayton Henry is a really good artist. He really just he's done some really he did Batman and Catwoman. I mean, he's really a good artist, and I think he's a good choice for this. It has a really nice look to it and everything. Like I said, I don't think this first issue is going to blow you away, but he's definitely building things up, and he does a good job with the first issue, and so we'll kind of see where he takes it from here, but it's off to a good start, so I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Batman and the Joker Deadly Duo number 5, written and drawn by Mark Silvestri. So we know that there's the, kind of the mutant Jokers, but we don't quite, this issue, we do kind of figure out who's running this kind of whole thing. And I will not give that away, but so what we learn is, so there was the church massacre. So now we're seeing the ramifications of why this is all happening, and with the connection to the church massacre. So what it was is, underneath the church, there were, they were building a new subway. It didn't work, but now there's all these catacombs, and that's where these kind of mutant Jokers are hanging out. And so Batman and Joker go down, now, Batman has set it, tracked them to there. So that's really interesting. The great reveal at the end, which I will not spoil here. One of the more interesting parts of the story is, because, of course, Jim Gordon's been kidnapped by the mutant Jokers. And so Batgirl shows up to the Batcave, and boy, she has a bone to pick with Joker. So that's a really good sequence. I really like that. I'm really been surprised by this book. It's really nicely paced and everything. It's really, obviously Silvestri's a really great artist, but like I said, this has really surprised me that this is really well written. I'm really enjoying this book, and we got, I think, a couple more issues to go. So I'm really intrigued, and the twist at the end really has a nice, it's really going to move this story forward. So definitely continue to check this out. It's really good. Next up, we have Predator number 1, written by Ed Brisson, with artwork by Nitho Diaz is the penciler, and Bernardino Bebe is the inker. So really what this kind of is, there was the 2010 film Predators, where the people were transported to another world and the predators hunt them. So that's the basic premise that Brisson is building upon here. But what's interesting about this is, that only included like 8, characters. Oh, excuse me. Where this one includes a lot of people. And what's interesting about it is they're from different time periods. So what has happened is, we don't know if the Predators have done this, or there was no explanation of why, they were transported and stuff like that. But they were picked for a certain reason, just like in the film. But some of them were put in hypersleep, so they kind of all come in at different times, because somebody says, well, I was kidnapped in 2015. Now it's like 2030 or whatever. So there's that, and and of course there's also where other non-human like creatures, so there's the predators, there's other creatures, it's kind of a free-for-all, and people are dying left and right. That's the basic premise here. I like the idea that they're doing these predators as miniseries. I think it helps because by doing it as a miniseries, that way you're not at issue like 6 and somebody says, oh well, this is not a new storyline. So they're basically doing storylines in chunks. I think they learned from the Alien comic as it went on that not only sales went down, but people didn't know when a new storyline was starting. So if you kind of do them as miniseries, then it works well, and that's the way Dark Horse did it. So I think Marvel is kind of looking back at that, hopefully, and using that MO. But once again, if you're a fan of Predator, this is a lot of fun. This one's a bloodbath. So, and it's interesting. And like I said, I don't want to say it's kind of a remake of the 2010 film, but it definitely calls from that, premise. So, I liked it. It's fun. The artwork, by Diaz and Babbo is really, really nice. It's a good looking book. If you're a mild Predator fan, this is I enjoyed this. It'll be interesting. There's an interesting twist to kind of see where Brisson's gonna take this story, but I liked it. Next up, we have Traveling to Mars, number 4, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Roberto Mele. So Roy is still on his way to Mars. So there's a couple things that happen in this issue. Cindy, his ex-wife, they find her, and he wants to talk to her, because he's ultimately going to die either way because he's got cancer. He's going to Mars and he's coming back. So he really wants to reconnect with her. That does not turn out well because somebody is actually pretending to be her. So there's a whole kind of sub story to that. But we also find out that there is kind of a fail-safe bomb that if something goes wrong or he, so he, gets the robots to, go out and, not disarm the bomb, but take it off because they know it's there. And what really is interesting, so the robots are Leopold and Albert. So Albert, being the smaller one, goes out, and so he lets the bomb go, but he loses his footing and he starts floating. So Leopold is able to turn the ship and catch him, but while he's out there, he gets hit by a rock, and it's like they're coming so fast. It's like, getting hit with a bullet. Now he doesn't die, but he's kind of damaged. And what you find out is he's actually he's fine, like everything, he remembers everything. He's just so scared that that Roy's gonna send him out again, and Roy promises that he won't. And what I really loved about this issue is that we're finding out that because really they were just generic robots, and that Roy, being with Roy all this time, they've kind of developed human emotions and characteristics. And that is really fascinating that they have learned how to somewhat become human. And it really was very touching. And of course, Russell's really good at that stuff. And he's really good at characters. And I really like that this story is about characters. And even though, there's just Roy and 2 robots, it just kind of blows me away that he really makes, those robots so great characters, that they're not just robots anymore. And that was just really, really amazing. That really blew me away this issue. And Mele's artwork continues to just be fantastic. He is a really great artist, and this is really a wonderful book. I love this book to death. It's definitely well worth checking out. And just, I cannot wait. Each chapter I cannot wait for. I'm really excited about this book. Next up, we have Blood Tree, number 2, written by Peter J. Tomasi with artwork by Maxim Simic. So Detective Azaro and his partner Diaz, so he starts to figure out that there's some sort of connection with the guy who's killing these people and putting angel's wings on them, that there's some sort of religious, like, church connection to that. So he kind of discovers that, and he kind of he finds out from a priest that the way that the angels there's also another set of murders where there's this guy trying to rape this girl, and the guy who tries to rape her, he kills him, and then he goes back to kill the whole family, and he lays out the kids in the tree a certain way. So that's how he makes the connection that this is a painting from like a church. So now they have to go to like all these churches and try to find this out. So it's really an interesting story. I'm really kind of liking what Tomasi's doing here. It's kind of a murder mystery, basic structure here, but I like how he's unfolding how the killer, is it's kind of like, Silence of the Lambs, stuff like that, where you have this like psycho killer. And the detectives have to kind of figure out, how the connections and everything's fitting together. So, it's really an interesting story. Simic's artwork is really nice. It has kind of a really a neat look to it. I really kind of like it. And once again, I'm enjoying it. Like I said, I'm not necessarily, it's not blowing me away, but I'm kind of liking this detective murder mystery thing, and it's really interesting. So I still think it's kind of worth checking out. Next up, we have Black Tape #2, written by Dan Pansion, with artwork by Dilber Talajic. So the basic premise of this is that Jack King, was a rock and roll star. He died, and his wife Cindy, is left with, they hadn't been married long, and she kind of discovers that there was like, there's kind of an underground thing to the mansion, and he may have been doing satanic rituals. So that's the basic structure. So the second issue builds upon that. Cindy starts finding out, that the symbols that she discovered are satanic rituals and stuff. And it's interesting. I wasn't necessarily blown away by the first issue. And I think the idea was good. It just didn't really, there was a lot of exposition. The second issue moves along a little bit farther. I still find a lot of elements intriguing. I just think, for me, that the pacing's not quite, we're still kind of getting exposition, which is, understandable because, you don't want to reveal too much, at first, but I'm not entirely sold at this point. I mean, I still like a lot of the elements, and there's some, there's a lot of things that I think are, that I liked more in this issue than the first issue, but I'm still not quite sold. I think, the next issue is going to be, make or break for this. I think it's a good book, and I think there's a lot of concepts. I'm just not entirely sold on it yet. Which can kind of be a catch-22 for a book, because sometimes, everything will turn and all the pieces will fall into place. So hopefully that'll happen next issue. But I do like a lot of things about this. The artwork's actually really nice. Talajic's art really is nice, because, most people are standing around talking, so it's not like there's monsters or anything like that. So he's doing a good job. It looks good, and I think the story's interesting. It's just not quite gelling 100% for me right now. But I still think it's interesting. We'll kind of see. Hopefully that third issue will really bring it around. Next up, we have Fantastic Four #5, written by Ryan North, with artwork by Ivan Ferrelli. I will, a bit of a preface. Ferrelli is a different artist from the previous 4 issues. The artwork's good, not quite as good as the main artist, but it was good. So basically, what this is, this particular issue, Nick Scratch and the Salem 7 come to attack the Fantastic Four because they're heading back home, and there's still the ramifications of what happened in New York. So what it is, they fight them, and of course, there's magic involved. And what he basically does is kind of rearranges like their molecules and stuff to where they can't digest food. So ultimately they'll starve to death. So what they have to do is they have to go to the dimension to fight them, and Reed has to basically re-engineer their DNA. That's the easiest way to explain it. I will say that North has a great explanation of how this happens, and I'll give him brownie points that like it all makes sense. It's kind of batshit crazy, but he totally like, okay, yeah, I'll go with that explanation. And that's what I love about North as a writer, is that he'll come up with this like insane, crazy stuff, and it's like, oh, well, I'll just explain it, and then, oh, it totally makes sense. I get it. This seemed like a little bit of a standalone type issue that a lot of the previous ones have. I think he's just continuing to build. Like I said, Farrelly does a decent job. I just wasn't as impressed as the main artist has been, but he does a decent job. I think it's a good, decent artwork. But like I said, it's always hard when you're used to one artist and then come to a different. So I'm certainly not knocking Farrelly's artwork. I just want to say it's kind of different. So there was a bit of an adjustment to it. So we'll kind of see if he stays on the book or not. But like I said, he does a really good job. I mean, and especially the dimensional stuff is really, really well done. There's one page with Reed Richards that is really, really well done. So I think it was just I'm used to one artist and not the other. So, but he does a good job, and it was a good story. So I'm really, once again, I'm impressed with this Fantastic Four book. I kind of like the single issue theory where there's still the storyline of, what happened in New York and the ramifications of that. But they're kind of standalone issues, which I think is good because North is kind of rebuilding the Fantastic Four. And I think these single issues are kind of like a first season in a television show where you have these standalone stories, but you're also continuing the underlying story. And I think it's a smart move on North's part to do that with this book, to kind of, this is almost like a first season. So, he's just building up to storylines. So I really like that. I really love this book. It's well worth checking out. It continues to impress. And I honestly, it's the first time in a long time that I've looked forward to a Marvel book every month. It's pretty shocking, I've got to say that, especially after last week's less than spectacular reveals of a lot of first issues from Marvel. So definitely continue to check out Fantastic Four. Next up, we have Children of the Black Sun, number 3, written by Dario Ciccio, with artwork by Litza Canocini. So what this is, so the older kids are initiating the younger. There was 2 black suns. The first one where kids were born and they're kind of odd and everything, and then there's the second black sun where there's younger kids. So the older kids have we've discovered that they kind of have these somewhat telekinetic type powers. So they're recruiting the young ones because they're planning something for Bright Veil. What they're planning, we're not quite sure, but we kind of see this issue, they go to like this mystic that lives in the sewer. I don't know, it's really kind of strange. Like you can ask it one question and it will give you like not an answer, but kind of a riddle answer. That's the best way to describe it. So they're definitely, the older kids are kind of planning something, but they obviously need the younger Black Sun kids to figure out their plan. So that's what's continuing. I really kind of dig this book. It's really quite interesting. Like I said, and I've said it before, the kids really remind me of like Village of the Damned, the movie from the 60s, where they all had the same haircut. So not that they all have the same haircut here, but they all have white hair, and they're kind of strange looking, but they look very similar. It's really interesting. And Ciccio's script is really, he's building nicely on the story. Condesini's artwork is really, really nice. I'm really digging this book. I'm really, I like how it's unfolding, how the story is kind of washing over you, was really kind of tough to do, but they're really pulling it off here. I still think it's worth checking out. It'll be really interesting to see where this all lands, because so far it's been really good. And finally, this week we have Batman number 133, written by Chip Zdarsky, with Mike Hawthorne on pencils and Andre de Badento doing the inks, and then there's the Robin Superman John Kent backup, the toy box, written by Zdarsky with artwork by Miguel Mendoza. So this issue, Bruce Wayne is in an alternate Gotham universe where there is, Bruce Wayne is dead, so he actually has become Batman, so he's really fighting back. So we find out that really the Red Hood is really behind this whole Gotham. He's running Gotham. So and what we find out is he's kind of doing experiments on kids. Selina is not happy with that. So even Selina's like, pretty much our Catwoman, where like she's not really a hero, she's not really a villain, but like she'll do what needs to be done. And in this case, she's really pissed that he's experimenting on kids. So so she ultimately kind of joins Batman to like help take down the Red Hood. She's not like she's so there's that going on. And so we also find out that he basically digs up the Bruce Wayne, and he discovers that there's multiverse energy within Bruce Wayne. So there's something going. That is maybe why Bruce has been transported to this world, or this alternate universe. We don't know, but that kind of like and then the backup is kind of dealing with Batman disappearing, where Robin, Jason Todd and John Kent are trying to basically figure out what's happened. Now Toyman has traveled to another dimension. We're not sure if it's the same dimension where Bruce is right now, but so they bring basically Robin goes there to find the kidnapped people and bring them back, because Mr. Terrific has given him a suit to like transport through dimensions. And so this story kind of is part of the lead story, where they're trying to find out where Bruce has gone to. So it really Zdarsky's done a really interesting job here with this book, where he started off with Failsafe, apparently sends him to another universe. Now he's stuck in this alternate universe where there's no Batman, but there's everybody else, and it's really been quite interesting where Zdarsky's really taking this, and I really love how the balance between what he's doing here and what Ram V's doing with Detective, where Ram is doing Detective more as like, Batman is a detective, where, Zdarsky's really doing Batman as like, a superhero. So I think that's what's I'm really loving about, the difference between the two books, that they're not just, stepping on each other and doing the same thing. But Zdarsky's doing a really nice job here. So, and Hawthorne's art on the main story is really good. Mendoza does a decent job on the Toy Story, the Toyman backup. I'm like I said, I'm continuing to dig the book. So, I still think it's worth checking out. That's going to do it. That's it. We're done. We've got them all done. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. Ryan Skinner runs a great store. It's a really good story. They do a great pull service, so that way you don't miss anything. There's Annie, Eduardo, Wendy, Derek. It's just a really great store. They offer discount. If you sign up for the pull service, you get discounts on your new comics. They offer 30% off of trades and graphic novels every day. Every day you walk in there and it's like, it's like on sale every day. They have a nice manga selection at 20% off. And it's really a nice store, really good store, great customers. Check out their social media. There's always something going on. Ryan does unboxing every week, so you can see what new comics are coming out. So definitely check that out. If you live in the more metropolitan LA area, there's Pulp Fiction Culver City. Same name, different owners. Chris and her team run that store. They have a lot of the same discounts, but obviously, I go to the Long Beach store. That's my hometown. So, but definitely, as always, support your local comic shop. They're the backbone of the industry. Make sure that if you order stuff ahead of time, make sure you pick it up on a timely basis, because the stores have to pay for it before you get it. So it's very important to make sure you pick up all your books on a timely basis, and definitely, so as always, support your local comic shop. It's really, they rely on you, because they're really, like I said, they're the backbone of the industry. And as always, we end our show with please be kind. Kindness doesn't cost anything. It's absolutely free to be kind. Kindness is just great. Doing the little things, saying hello, thank you. It really makes you feel good, makes others feel good. Just being kind to each other is really important right now, because a lot of things are tough, weather, the economy, everything. But being kind, once again, doesn't cost anything, and it's good for you, and it's good for everyone else. So that's going to do it this week. Thanks for watching. Just be safe out there. Take care of yourselves. As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comments are appreciated. Please share our YouTube videos. It helps a lot with building the audience. So thanks for watching. Thanks for bearing with me. Take care of yourselves. We'll be back again next week. This is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com signing off. Take care of yourselves, folks. Bye-bye.